Welcome to the Heart of Dad podcast, the show for entrepreneur dads, consultant dads, senior leader dads who want to show up differently in their lives, to find a deeper peace of mind, more connection with their families, and more creativity and productivity in their lives. To mark the beginning of season 4, I'm running a competition. For anyone who rates and reviews the shows on Apple Podcasts, I'll enter you into a free draw for 2 free coaching sessions with me. I'll be announcing the winners at the end of season 4, and you can find out more details on the website www.heartofdad.com. This week on Heart of Dad, I'm interviewing Micheal Hilton. Direct and to the point, Micheal is a higher performing leader of married dads. He was ready to end his life after struggling from stress, depression, anxiety and overwhelm. He was running a business, juggling a marriage, trying to balance life, and it all got too much. After turning his life around, he started on a journey to help men take back control of their lives, levelling up in work, family, intimacy, and achieving peak performance throughout life, so they can step up and become better fathers, husbands, and leaders. So this week on Heart of Dad, I'm really delighted to introduce Micheal Hilton. Hi, Micheal.
How you doing, my friend? I'm glad to be here, man. Happy to be here. How are you?
Really, really good to see you. I've been wanting to have you on the show for a long time, and so glad we got to this point today to have you on. So for anybody who doesn't know you, Micheal, do you want to say a little bit about who you are and what you're up to these days?
Yes, man. Yeah, so I'm a father of 3, very high energy, interactive kids, all from the age of 6.5 downwards. So I've got a little girl, a boy, and 2 boys, which is a story in itself. Being a father, I'm a coach. I help predominantly dads. I work with a lot of dads, really, to help them create better results in their lives. Guys that are kind of underperforming and want to take their lives to the next level. Basically, I kind of, in layman's terms, I say guys that want to get their shit together. Struggling with stress, anxiety, overwhelm. Their mental health's not where they want it to be. Their physical health's not where they want it to be, and they're just not. The relationship's not what they want it to be, and they're just not creating the results that they desire and they know that they can achieve in life, and they just feel overwhelmed. So, that journey really come from my chaos and mayhem in my life that led me to getting my quote unquote shit together as well as we do, because it's always this constant, endless journey. And as I was doing that and sharing videos and, putting that out there and just sharing my journey, and I had other guys reach out asking if I could help them too. And then just from that, it kind of grew and snowballed. And earlier this year, I put a video out there. And I think it's almost at 1 million. I think it's just under 1 million views at the moment, sharing my story about my struggles 6.5 years ago. So it resonated a lot with a lot of men. What really blew me away was the comments. The amount of men that kind of said, "Man, I've never shared this before," and "Man, that has so touched my heart. I identify with that." So that was nice, man. So just currently at the moment, this journey's taken me to a place now where I work with men, work with dads, and yeah, that's where I'm currently at the moment, man.
Brilliant. We're going to dive into your story in a bit more detail, I know, but it's fantastic you're touching dads' lives in that way, and they are touched by your story as well. I know that when I watched that video as well, it was really very, very powerful as a example of how you show up in the world. So I'm kicking off season 4 of Heart of Dad, and you're early on in the season. And I'm bringing a question in, which I was on my mind, but I didn't ask people before. But I'd love to hear your view on it. And the question is this: what does fatherhood mean to you, Micheal?
Man, as you ask that question, the first thing that comes up to me is leadership. That's what comes up for me with fatherhood: leadership, leading on the front foot, set an example for your kids to follow. I hate the whole kind of do as I say, but don't do as I do. I hate that. That's probably one of my biggest bugaboos in the world. With politicians and everyone that's kind of do as I say, but don't do as I do. That's one thing that really bugs me. So as a father, I always look to lead by example, do what I say that I'm going to do. And I guess if that would be the answer for me, is leadership. That would be the answer. That's what fatherhood means to me. Setting the example, teaching my kids through my actions, not just my words, Matt. That would be
Yeah.
my definition of fatherhood for me, man.
Brilliant. Love it, Michael. And um, I mean, if we can dive into that a little bit more, because it's kind of sparked off lots of questions in my mind. I'm so really curious to hear a bit more about, what that leadership looks like. When you say doing as you do, and not just saying as you do. Like, how does it show up in your life? What sort of things are you actively or consciously thinking about that you want your kids to grow up with and knowing about dads and men?
Okay, so for me, like with my daughter, let's take my daughter for example. Like I always look at it that I am setting the example for her future husband, right? So she's kind of looking at dad and how he acts and how he treats mum, treats the kids as her future husband, right? Because they say a lot, don't they? When a daughter grows up, they look at someone that kind of resembles their father. So I try and lead by example, by the way I communicate with my wife, by the way I conduct myself. As we're recording this, obviously we're just about to go into our second lockdown, and like for me, it's like how I conduct myself with that. Am I going to sit about and piss and moan about it, or am I going to step up and kind of do what I need to do and lead on the front foot, right? And how I react to these challenging situations. And for me, with my daughter, that's important for me. Is like how I'm treating mum, what I'm doing in the house. She's getting to see what a man does and how a man treats a woman. On the flip side, my two boys, it's the same. It's how I'm treating mummy. I'm setting the example for my two boys of how they grow up and how they conduct themselves and how they lead themselves. In our house, we're very, very active in the sense like of roughhousing. Me and my boys are always fighting, and I'm always educating them around. It's like it's okay to be like this in certain settings. I'm always educating them around this. I'm not kind of one of these fathers that say, don't do that, don't do this, don't fight, don't do this. I'm kind of like, no, there's a time and a place for it. And I'm always educating my kids around that. And for me, like with my boys, it's setting the example. What does a man do? How does a man conduct himself? Again, in these situations, am I losing my shit? Am I screaming and shouting? Am I kicking the cat? Am I shouting at mum and stuff like that? It's like how I'm conducting myself, because basically, as most of us all know in the coaching and, from the age of 0 to 7, that's where kids learn most of the behaviors. And when I see things in my kids that really trigger me and when they do things, I just reflect that back to myself. Not always perfectly, Matt, by the way, right? Because I'm not perfect at this stuff. But when I see them do stuff that really irritates me, I'm like, they fucking got that from you, right? They got that from you. That's you coming through them, because they've only ever seen you do it or mum do it. Obviously, they're at school now and pick up some other stuff, but I see that, and I'm like, shit, man, I need to up my game, because my kids are just a mirror. They're just showing me what I need to work on with the things that they do. And I'm like, that really fucking irritates me. Why are you doing that? So one of the things, for example, is like, is shouting from upstairs, downstairs. So when they're, mum, dad, and I'm upstairs, I'm like, kids, listen, stop shouting. If you want us, come downstairs. But then I'll be upstairs and I'm like, Katie, which is my wife, I'll shout down to my wife. And then I'm like, shit, I'm doing exactly what I hate. And that's do as I say, but don't do as I do. So yeah, man, like leadership for me is showing my daughter the kind of man and the standards she's going to set for the man that she has in her life, right? And setting the standards for my boys on how to conduct themselves and how to interact with the world and interact with other women and other men.
Beautiful. And so much resonates in my life, and thinking about the banana skins as well as kind of the good opportunities to model for my son. But you say your kids are very young, aren't they? They're all under 6, you were saying. What did you come into fatherhood with that intention around do as I do, not do as I say? Did you have that conscious reflection when your first child was born? Who's your oldest? Is your daughter your oldest? Or?
No, Riley. Riley's my eldest.
Right. Okay.
I wouldn't say so, Matt, because I was in a particularly rough place mentally for myself. From the outside, my life looked okay. Beautiful wife. I had my first kid. I had my own business. On the outside, life looked okay. But internally, I wasn't in a great place myself. And I would say, I always said that I wouldn't be the father to my kids, or I wouldn't be the man to my kids that my dad was to me, because my dad really didn't show any interest in my life, or never, my only recollections of my dad, really, the things that, and this is what I talk about, like with other men, it's like, it's not what you say, it's what you do. And when I talk about my dad, the first image that comes up for me is sitting in my old house as a little kid near the front door where there was a window. And I would sit there looking at this window, waiting for my dad to come and pick me up. And my mum going, he's not going to come. He's not going to come. I'd go, but he promised me, Mum. He promised me. And she said, I know, but it's been 2 hours now and he's not going to come. And I always remember just sitting there as a little kid, looking out that window, waiting for my dad to come. So I said, I would never do that. Now, I did do that. I did do that, but I done it in a different way. Working long hours, breaking promises, not being there mentally and emotionally for my kid and for my wife. So I would say when my kid was first born, yes, I didn't understand ownership, leadership and responsibility then, really. I spoke it because I just regurgitated it out of fucking books like most people do when they read something. But actually myself, I wasn't in that mental space myself where I was actually doing that stuff. I might have told you that I was, but my actions showed something very different to the words that came out of my mouth, Matt.
Yeah, that's thanks so much for sharing that. And we're going to dive a bit more into that if we can, Michael. So, so in the timeline, then, when Riley was born, you were in the throes of, or starting to be in crisis in yourself. Can you tell us a bit more about what had led you to that point?
Yeah, so if I go back, like I've been clean and sober from cocaine, alcohol and crack now for like 15 years. So I've been clean and sober for like 15 years from drinking drugs. On that journey, my life did improve, right? But one thing that I never really took seriously was like my mental health. I'd stopped drinking. I'd got the handle on that. I'd sorted that out. And then, I met my wife now in recovery, and we got together and things are good. But I got to a point where I went on a journey. I went on an entrepreneurial journey. I was like, I don't want to work for people anymore. I hate it. I want to work for myself. And I went on this entrepreneurial journey, and things started to get good. I started to make money. But what started happening is I look back on it now. The life that I thought that I wanted, I didn't want when I got it. Like I was making this money and I was busy with clients, and I was, I was coaching like in a different kind of setting. I was like a health and fitness coach then. And I kind of soon realized that everything that I thought that was, it wasn't, right? I kind of say like I put my ladder up against the wrong wall and I climbed to the top of it, and I'm like, oh, actually this isn't what I wanted. And I created this tiny little life around a massive business. I created this tiny little life around a massive business, and I wasn't looking after my mental health. I was talking a good game, but I wasn't really, with my actions, wasn't really following through with what I was saying with clients. And what happened is over time, it's just the overwhelm, the stress, the anxiety, constantly every day, like fear and worry. It didn't matter if I made $2,000 or $3,000 that day. I would constantly wake up the next day and think, I'm going to lose it all. It's all going to go. I was lying to my wife about how much money I was making. I was not spending time at home, constantly, I'll be home at 5 and not turning up to 8 o'clock at night. And the irony of it is I always remember this conversation. My wife said to me, she said, so look, when are we going to spend more time with you, right? This is where my headspace was at the time. And she was like, when are we going to spend more time with you? When are me and Riley going to spend more time with you? Because at the time I only had one kid. And I said, look, once I've made X amount of money, or once I've got X amount of clients and I'm really busy, then I will spend more time with you, right? If I look at it now, like I was busy, but when I'm busier, then I'm going to spend more time with you. And I think this is like a trap with a lot of guys that they fall into is I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't have a clear plan. I didn't know what enough looked like. And when you don't know what enough looks like, the answer is usually more, right? If you don't know, people say, I want more money. Well, how much more money do you want? I just want more money. Well, if you're not clear on how much, you'll spend your life constantly chasing money, right? So that was kind of where I'd got to. And then it got to the point where I just couldn't cope anymore. I just couldn't carry on. You know, on the outside, I had this smile and, you know, but on the inside, I was just felt empty. I felt lost. I felt like people would be better off without me around, especially my family. I was grumpy. I was miserable. You know, I'd get up in the morning. I'd try and get out the house before my wife woke up and my kid woke up, so I wouldn't have to have that conversation about what time I'd get home. And in the end, I just ended up burning my business to the ground. You know, I just had to walk away from it, and my mental health was just on the floor at the time. And I just felt, you know, like a lot of men that I work with, is I knew that there was change. I knew I could change. I knew that I wanted to change. But the truth was, I didn't know how to change. And I didn't want to ask for help, right? I didn't want to ask for help. Being a man, I wanted everyone to think that I had my shit together, and I did not want to ask for help. But I deep down, I really wanted it, but I just didn't want to ask for it.
What do you say to men now? What would you have said to yourself looking back? You know, if you could have had that conversation with yourself 6 or so years ago.
It's a good question, man. What would have been a conversation? Conversation I'd have with myself is well, it's kind of the conversation I have with guys now. Is just being very direct. You know, the conversation I've been with myself is like, is your life working? Is this really working? You know, like back then, it'd blow my mind to even think about it now. Like, I'd be like, I've never set goals. I only ever set goals in one area of my life: money and business. And when I heard something like set goals in your relationship with your wife and your kids, I was like, fuck, I never thought of that, right? So that'd be a conversation I would have with myself. Is like, you know, this drive for success, or what you perceive as success. And there's nothing wrong with having nice stuff and driving for success and helping people and stuff like that. But can you see that you're going to get to a point where you're going to be sitting in that Range Rover by yourself because there's going to be no one else around? And that almost happened. Like, my wife almost left. She was sick of it, right? Which, you know, I don't blame her. So that'd be the conversation I'd have myself, is really to kind of sit down and like show with like what, it's not what my beliefs were, because my beliefs were I was a good father and a good husband. It's like, what are your actions actually showing you? What are your actions? Not your beliefs, but what are your actions? What are your actions? What results you produce in your life? Sexless marriage, arguing all the time, not present with your son, right? Out working all the hours, letting your family down for clients, constantly on your phone, constantly on your laptop. They are the results, right? Regardless of what you think you believe are the results, you know, they are the results. So that's the conversation I'd have with myself, is actually showing myself like the results that I'm producing in my life.
Yeah, no, really, so powerful. And I was just thinking, as you were saying that, you know, that's the enormous tension, isn't it? It's between kind of the construct we have of how reality should be, and then the reality we're living, and not being able to sort of square the two. And that creates that sort of unbearable tension that can lead you to, you know, break down back into substance dependency, or you know, suicidal thoughts and stuff. So I was curious to know, you were off drink and drugs for 15 years. Was there any time in that period where you were kind of tempted to go back in and use again?
I'd say the first 15 months, 18 months was pretty hard. That was really, well, it was hard. That was hard. But not really, not even in that time when my mental health was on the floor. No. The thing that I did, like, I had a problem with gambling. That was something that I did do that. I went and I kind of had a gamble, because again, that's a release. That's what it was. I didn't know how to deal with the anxiety, stress, overwhelm. Didn't know what that was like I do know now, and how I actually leverage it. And it's actually a very powerful tools. That, like, anxiety, stress, and depression are very powerful tools where you leverage them and use them in the right way. I didn't know any of that then. You know, I just was experiencing all these feelings that I used to numb with drink and drugs or gambling or stuff like that. And then they were intensifying. But I knew, I never once did I think about go back to drink and drugs. Now, I thought about killing myself, and I'd kind of planned to kill myself, you know, like when I burnt the business to the ground, and I laugh because I'd burnt the business to the ground. I said to my missus, we need a break. I need to get away. Like, I'm having a lot of suicidal thoughts and stuff like that. She went, okay. So I booked us a holiday and we went to Devon Cliffs. Now, if you're feeling suicidal, Devon Cliffs probably ain't the best place to go, right? And we went Devon Cliffs, and I'm glad that I did, because I went out for plenty of walks along the beach. We've been back there a few times. We went back there this year, actually, and I always do a video on the beach where I had this moment that really kind of shook me and woke me up in my life. And, I was walking along the beach and I was asking myself the questions like, why has this happened? Why has this happened? And I didn't want to drink. I didn't want to take drugs. I knew that's not an option for me. Especially with my little boy there. But I had all that guilt and shame built up inside me about the man that I had become and what I had done and all the lies and deceit. And I'm walking along the beach and I'm constantly asking myself this question, why me? Why me? Why has this happened to me? And I just had this moment where, I call it the voice. Gut intuition. People call it God, Jesus, whatever you want to call it. I call it the voice. And the voice just said to me, the reason you're depressed is because you've got the inability to accept reality for what it is. And that stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, fuck, where have I read that from? Where have I heard that from before? So I got my phone, I'm looking, and I hadn't read it anywhere. It was just something that came up. Michael, the reason you're depressed is because you've got the inability to accept reality for what it is. The reality is you've created this fucking shitstorm yourself by your beliefs, your stories, your decisions. And that was, I'd like to say that's the moment my life changed. A lot of people say that was the moment that everything turned around. It was, but it was a fucking struggle still. I'm not saying that after that it was all easy. And a lot of people kind of say, and I had this moment and there was great light and unicorns and everything was perfect. And that's not been my experience, right? But in that moment, I was like, that there, Matt, was kind of when leadership, ownership, responsibility, leading on the front foot. In that moment, I can relate that to there is when I had that realization that isn't what I was doing. And that's where the journey started for me there.
Amazing story. And I think that's so real as well, that you can have these incredible flashes of insight where everything changes and yet nothing has changed immediately. And it's kind of a progressive experience.
I did become an insight junkie, man. Do you know Jason Goldberg? Are you familiar with Jason Goldberg? So I had many conversations with Jason Goldberg, and I've said because I've done one of his courses before, and I said to him, I said, I've just become an insight junkie. Like, I've just become addicted to insights, but I had the insights, but I never took the next step, which was the action that leads from the insight. So even though I've become very insightful and constantly have these insights, my life didn't change as quickly as it could have because I didn't follow it up with action. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of the tension, isn't it? Of kind of the impulse towards growth versus the kind of the resistance to change. Kind of, and those two kind of can hold us in stasis, can't they? I had a question. I don't know if it's not too personal, but I was just wondering about how it sounds like Riley was conceived in this period of kind of enormous upheaval in your life and crisis, and not even quite sure what my question is, but it's like I'm curious about how how things evolved between you and Katie. Was it a conscious choice to start having children at that point? Was it something that you both wanted? She wanted more, or you wanted more, or it just seemed natural to do in amongst all this kind of storm? I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. Well, at the time before Riley was born, like, it was just me and Katie. We had plenty of time, and I wouldn't say I was in so much of the shitstorm then. I wouldn't say. I'd say it really kind of got intensified when Riley come on, because then there was more pressure on me to produce better results because I've got another mouth to feed, and I was the only breadwinner. Like, at the time, my wife was working, I was working, she fell pregnant. And the truth was, like, before I met my wife, I didn't want to get married and I didn't want to have kids, right? I didn't want to, because selfishly, I didn't want to just commit to one woman, and selfishly, I didn't want to have children because they take your time, right? And then I met my wife, and things started to change. Like, I was like, I want to get married, I want to settle down. And then we was talking about children, and I was like, yeah, I want to have kids now. As I kind of evolved and matured a lot more, and my mindset started changing, views started changing. So yeah, we wasn't in so much of a crisis before Riley come along. We had our ups and downs, like every couple and that, but we were okay. But I think when Riley come along, I put so much more pressure on it. I put pressure on myself, which I didn't know how to handle, because then I become the sole breadwinner. And when my wife would stop working, we decided, you better stay at home, Mum, and I'll go out and be the breadwinner. So that's when, my inability to handle, the stress, the anxiety and that kind of stuff really kind of intensified. It really, like when I've done my video on the beach, I always say it's like this, when the tide's in, you don't see a lot, right? And when the tide goes out, what it does is it exposes all the dips, the rocks, and all the crap that you don't see. And basically, when my kid come along and I was kind of like the sole breadwinner, and I was out hustling and grinding and making the money, it was like my boy come along and kind of exposed me. That time exposed me for what I really was, right? For who I really was, which was a blessing. Which is a blessing in disguise. It was challenging, but it really kind of showed me how still self-absorbed I was, and how my values were in the wrong place, and how my focus was in the wrong place. It just exposed me for who I was,
Totally resonate with that experience in my life too. I think that's one of the things that children coming along absolutely put you into ruthless scrutiny, don't they, of where you are in your life.
Yeah.
Massively. So how are things different when your next two were born? I guess you're in a very different space, and mentally and emotionally. What differences did you see when they came along?
Well, I've been working after my meltdown. I started working with my first coach, and he wasn't a father or anything like that, and we're good friends now. But one of the things he really helped me see was, because I started coaching, and we had this conversation a little while ago and we was laughing about it. So, I'd done all this stuff. I'd gone back and got a job, hated the job. And I was like, right, I'm ready to get back into entrepreneurship and stuff like that. And then I see a coach pop up, and he was kind of sharing some stuff. And I was like, right, let's get a coach, right? I didn't have that before. Let's get a coach. This is what I want to do, so let's get a coach. So I got a coach, and his first question to me was like, one of the first questions, like, what do you want to do and all that? And I said, right, okay. I said, so what I want to do is I want to get the business up and running, get my business going again. I really want to focus on that. And basically what I was doing was repeating that old cycle. And he quickly pointed out to me, he said, it's not, what we don't want to do is what we've done before, where you built a tiny little life around your business. What we want to do is create the life that you want and the family that you want, and build the business around that. And I was like, oh, right, okay. And I wasn't sure I really wanted to do that, because I still had a lot of that. Even though I drew the line in the sand, stepped over it, I'm not going to be that man anymore. I'm not going to do that. That was my big moment. But them traits were still there. Them stories were still there. And they needed ironing out. They needed working out. So we started working, and, the guy helped me massively in my life, and made me put family as a priority, which was important to me, and by the time my second boy come along, I was still in a job. I wasn't back working for myself. I was still in a job. But I was generally in a better place myself. And then when Hope come along, obviously as years have gone on, I've continued to work myself, had coaches, mentors, and worked with some of the best people, and continued to evolve and continue to improve myself. But, it's just I look back at the man I was 6.5 years ago, and it is a very different place. Now, do I still make mistakes? Can I still go from 0 to 100 with my kids sometimes? Can I still get irritable sometimes? Can I, make mistakes? Of course, of course. It's just part of the journey, man. It's part of the learning. I'm not perfect. But I resonate with people that are honest about that, right? Because I don't know anyone that is perfect at that. I know everyone makes their mistakes, because we don't have like this written script of how to be the perfect fathers and stuff like that. So yes, man, the answer to your question is a very different place, not in the chaos of mayhem and that I was 6.5 years ago now, even though I've got 3 very highly energetic kids.
Sounds a real blessing as well. Well, one thing I was reflecting on as you were talking about, I've shared in some of my podcasts how, for me, the experience of having a child was a bit like an emotional tsunami in my life, and my coping mechanism was really to throw myself more into work. So I set up some new businesses in the months after my son was born, and threw myself into that because I just didn't know what was hitting me. I couldn't kind of process it or cope with it, and I didn't have the wherewithal. And I had some friends who had told me what it might be like, but you kind of just think they're just kind of exaggerating or not being very kind. And I was just wondering, like for you, I love that story of kind of building a business around family life, but I was wondering whether that you still kind of ride that tension sometimes of being pulled into throwing yourself into your entrepreneurial life at the expense of family sometimes.
So just briefly, just for answer that, like one of the, like what you said there about that pull, like we're opening up more businesses and stuff like that. Like I get a lot of that with guys in my groups, and I say to the guys in my groups, there's a reason why you do it. You do it because you get significance from it, right? So think about this: like when I went to work, I would hunt the animal, I'd kill the animal, I'd get money, right? So it gives me significance. It made me feel important about myself. Like, cool, I've got the hunt, I've got the kill, I've got money. It's tangible. I can see it, significance, right? Now, when I was at home, my relationship wasn't going very well with my wife. I was so stressed out and overwhelmed that my sex drive was completely non-existent. I was struggling with my boy. I didn't know because of all this stress and all this build-up. So at home, I wasn't getting any significance. I couldn't see any tangible results other than it's painful to be at home. But when I'm at work, I'm getting results, and I'm at work, I'm getting my significance. And like I said to a lot of guys, it's why we do it. We do it for a reason, because you spend your time at work hustling and grinding, you get significance because you see tangible results. When you're at home, you're not seeing tangible results, right? The kids are screaming and shouting. You think, right, I'm going to behave, like, going to teach these kids how to behave properly. And they start screaming and shouting. You're like, what the fucking hell am I doing wrong? And then you and your wife start arguing about something. You're like, fucking hell. See, and that was one of the things why I threw myself more and more into work, because of that significance I was getting from it. It was giving me meaning where I wasn't getting that at home because it wasn't tangible. I couldn't see it. So, that's kind of why I see a lot of men, a lot of guys that I work with, why they fall into that habit loop of doing that. Now, go on, man.
Go. No, you go for it. I think you're about to answer my question.
Yeah. So to answer your question is yes, yeah. I can. There can be times, and I think like what I do with guys is it's not having the balanced lifestyle. It's being a more rounded man. Now, there's a season where maybe you might have to work a little bit longer than you normally would. That's okay if you have to do that for a few nights or maybe for a week, right? But if you're doing it night after night, day after day, and neglecting your family, then that's not okay. And as long as when it comes to it, when that time calms down, that you exchange that energy with your family and that time with your family, and you spend time with the family, I don't see anything wrong with that. So there's times like this week, for example, I've got one of my 5-day free challenges starting. So every night this week, I'll be on calls all night this week. Do I normally do that? No, that comes up once a month. So then next week, I don't have, other than my group call on a Monday, I don't have nothing else in the week. And I make sure my phone's off and my laptop's done at 3-4 o'clock, and I'm with the family then. So yes, it can be very easy to do that, but I have set boundaries in my life, and I always remind myself of where that will take me, right? And has it been a slower process building my business that way? Possibly, yes. But I'm not prepared to work all the hours under the sun and lose my wife and my kids, or have a house where my wife's at home with 3 kids, right? And I'm not there and not present, I'm there and not present.
So that's really powerful what you've just shared, and I think a lot of men will resonate with it. So if I'm maybe oversimplifying, but what I'm hearing is actually you're making an active choice. Well,
Hmm.
that's the difference. You're saying actually,
Yeah, that's it, man. That's
yeah,
it, man. Mm.
yeah,
Before
yeah.
I wasn't making a choice because I didn't know what I was doing. You know, but like the wandering man, I was just a wandering man. I had two goals: to build my business and make money. That was it. I didn't have goals in anything else. All my focus was on that. That was it.
So coming back to what you were saying about significance, I think that was a really kind of interesting point. Have you found? I don't even know if this is the right question, but have you found a replacement of significance? So, it sounds like you don't attach all your significance to business and money anymore. You've built your life around your family.
Mm.
So, how does significance show up for you in your family relationship? It's not too crappy a question because
No, it's a cool question, man. It's another good question, man. I guess significance for me now around in my family is just being present with them, man. Again, I'm not always perfect at that, but just, play fighting with my kids, playing cars, running around, just playing with the kids. I get significance from that. Um, it's really because it's a really hard one to get that, like, leading by example is significance for me, right? Leading by example. When my kids are up in the morning, I'm always up. I get to the gym early. My kids are always seeing that. I make sure the wife's out of the bed. I make the bed. I say to my boy, my oldest boy, make your bed. It's your first achievement of the day. Pardon me. So I guess my significance in that is watching them grow. But I get it because it's a very slow significance. It's not like you go to work and bang, you get the hunt and you get the money. It's not like that. The significance in this, you've got to, and it's helped me with my patience a lot. I can be very impatient, want the results now, but working on I'm working on my patience. The significance in that is just seeing my kids grow, leading on the front foot. It's a slow burner in the household, and I guess that's how I see it. It's just playing and just seeing him grow. And what, my boy lost his second tooth last night. Has significance for me because he's growing, he's getting older.
yeah,
I look at him and I'm like, man, like, where's the time going? Like you're like coming up to 7 next year. It's crazy, right? But it's a really good question, man, because I understand why guys do it. I do understand because of the significance they get from making money and work. And it's like, I feel important there. But if their home's a battleground, they don't feel the importance there. They don't feel that importance. So what are you going to do in your life? Are you going to lean more to things that you get significance and you feel more important? Or are you going to spend more time doing things that you don't? By nature, we're going to kind of lean towards that way, right? So,
yeah,
yeah.
that's it.
I hope that answered
Yeah.
your question, man.
It did. No, brilliant answer. And I was also reflecting on my son's at a very similar stage. Just lost his second tooth, so
Yeah.
and turning 7
How
next
old
year.
is he?
Yeah,
How old is he?
six turning 7 next year. Yeah, yeah.
So
I
what?
love what you're saying about. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just going to share a real significant moment for me. This was I just share this story because it was just it was a beautiful moment. So we went on holiday a few years back with some friends, and we had my eldest boy and my middle boy, and they've both been brought up the same, but they're so very different, right? So my oldest boy is a lot like how I am now. Like he likes to win, he likes to push himself, And at the moment, I'm in that stage of coaching him through the processes. Like, it's great to want to win, right? But you can learn so much when you don't win. And it's not about getting upset about it. It's like, what do you need to do next time to improve? So he's very much like that. So we was on holiday, and there was this big pole, and he went to climb up it, and he got a few footsteps into it, got up a little bit, and he went, help me, Dad. And I said, Riley, I'm not helping you, but I will coach you and show you where to put your hands and your feet. And his pole's quite high up. I said, but I'm not doing the work for you because I refuse to do the work for my kids that they can do. I won't do that for them. So he dropped down. He went, no, I don't want to do it. I'm frightened. And he walked away. And I'm standing there, I'm thinking, okay, so how can I get him back to do this? Because I don't want him to walk away from this challenge, because what he will do is he associate this challenge as fearful. And as he grows up, that's what he would do. He'll make that connection. This is a challenge. This is hard. I'm frightened. So I walk away from it. So this was a real significant moment for me and a proud moment for me, because they come in these kind of blocks. They're quite small, like we said there, and then also bang, this big thing comes. You're like, that's it. So I climbed to the top of the pole, and I put a pound in the top of the pole, and I climbed down. And I said to him, "There's a pound up there, son." I said, "If you climb up there and get that pound, you could buy yourself a car," because he loves cars. So same thing, got up, same point. He went, "Daddy, help me, Daddy, help me." And I said, "Riley, I'm not doing the work for you. I'm not going to help you. I will coach you and show you where to put your hands and your feet. Anyway, put your foot here, hand here, foot here." Anyway, got to the top, got the pound and climbed down. And he was like, I've done it. And I'm like, boy, that's amazing, right? So then he's climbed up it again, come down. Now it's easy for him. He'd done it 4 times. As we was leaving the park, I said, "Come on, son." I said, "We're going to go now." And Mum was there, and she was like, "Well done, come on." He went, "Hold on." And he climbed to the top of the pole, put the pound at the top of the pole, climbed down. He said, "I'm going to leave that there for another kid, because then he'll be able to climb up there and get that pound, and it will help him." So we was like, that's a massive, proud mum and dad moment. A lot of significance there. And we was in the car, and as we was driving, and we was talking to him about it, and he just said, I was frightened. And I said, "Son," "Daddy gets frightened." And he went, "You don't get frightened. You're my dad." And I went, "Son, I get frightened, and it's okay to be frightened. Fear is a very natural thing, and it's okay to experience fear. But we get a choice. Do we let fear stop us from doing what we want to do? Or do we embrace the fear, but still do what we want to do?" I said, and in that moment, you embraced the fear and you done what you wanted to do. At the beginning, you didn't. And then he just kind of went on, just, "Okay, cool, Dad, that's it." So that's a moment for me there, man, that's very significant. Because like you said, you get moments where they're very just small, and then you get bang, it's a big one. You're like, that's a lot of significance in that for me as a father, and then they go and they're tiny again, and it's bang, and it's another big one.
I totally resonate with that. I can see some massive leaps forward. It's like a complete, almost overnight, it's like a complete system upgrade to my son. It's like, wow, where did that come from? He's just taken such a massive leap forward, and I'm running to catch up.
Definitely, man, definitely.
I want to circle back to something you were saying a few minutes ago about patience, because I originally started this podcast really thinking about entrepreneur dads, and thinking about some of my own journey, and people who end up in entrepreneurial roles. But this is not the podcast isn't exclusively for that kind of dad, but it's where I started. Had a particular, they have a particular drive, right? And patience isn't always a quality I associate with that type of personality that gets you that sort of drive. And I was wondering how you've been able to cultivate that quality within yourself, because I can imagine that it's I'm making an assumption, it may not be true, you may have had wells of patience within you already, but for me I know that's been a tough one, actually, to really slow down and take in the moment and be patient with whatever is in my life, and particularly with my children. So I'd love to hear more about your experience of growing patience.
I don't know if it's growing. I'm the same as you. Like, I work on my patience with my kids, right? And my wife brings me into balance with that. Like, it's so important to have the male and female role inside the house, because you balance each other out, and I think it's a massive, I think this is one of the massive problems we see with kids and homes at the moment, coming from broken homes and marriageless fathers, like families splitting up and the kids not having their fathers in the house. And I think my wife brings me into balance with that. When I get out of balance with that, in a sense, like I can go from 0 to 100, and my wife's like, "Well, hold on, calm down." Like, and I slow down and I take a bit of perspective. I'm like, yeah, okay. It happened this morning, actually. My eldest boy brought me into balance. Like, I was taking him to school, and my middle boy went in, and he kind of went in, and my eldest boy was going, "No, Dad, he can't. No, he can't. I went, "Riley, for God's sake, stop going on at me. Stop going on at me." And then he went, "Dad, if he doesn't register, he won't get any lunch." And I was like, "Oh, right, okay. Come back. We need to queue up and register so you get lunch." And I was like, "Thank you, Riley. Like, I apologise for having a go at you there. Like, I was wrong to do that, and you was actually helpful." So in that setting, it's not something I'm perfect at, man. I was a lot more patient when I didn't have kids and didn't have a business. That's the truth. When I was just working for someone, I was a lot more probably patient in my life because there was no urgency. There was no real, no real drive for me back then. I'd just go work, come home and just sit in front of the TV. But as my life's changed and I kind of looked to challenge myself and push myself and grow my business and grow as a father, grow as a husband, I can get impatient with that process sometimes. And, I think the key thing for me on this journey really is my wife kind of keeps me in check with that. She brings that balance to our relationship that's needed, So it's something that I do work on. Obviously I meditate and I do work on that. And, it's one of the things, like when I finish work, I make sure that I don't go from work straight home. I have at least half hour where I can kind of soak things up in my head and go from coach to dad, because I don't want to go home with a lot of stuff in my head of stuff I didn't finish or work, because that's just when I'm more irritable and I'm not present with my kids. So one big thing for me, Matt, I would say one of the biggest things, and this isn't an inside job. It's part of an inside job, but mobile phone. If I've got my mobile phone in my hand and my kids are talking to me, I'm more likely to be sharp and go from 0 to 100. Like, for God's sake, I'm doing something, I'm reading something, just leave me alone for a minute. Than I am if I don't have my phone. So that's a big thing for me there, man. That's a big thing for me,
Yeah, so spot on with that one. I think it's such a disruptor to connection, isn't it? The mobile phone. And that's one I struggle with. If I'm tired, I know that's kind of my default kind of outlet.
Yeah. Well, I think for a lot of entrepreneurial men, not many of them are as depressed as they think they are. I think just a lot of them are burnt out and tired. And I think protecting our energy is, as an entrepreneur and a businessman, entrepreneur, and married with kids, looking after our energy and protecting our energy is one of the most important things that we can do. It's vital, because I know when I'm tired, I'm grumpy, I'm more likely to eat shit, I'm more likely to get the ump quicker, when my energy's up, I don't feel any of that, man,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the other thing that came to mind when you're talking about that was a theme I've explored in the previous series, and it just kind of occurred to me as you were talking about. I love what you were saying about building your business around your family, and you've got young kids, so I think you might be in a similar situation that I found myself in, which is just really about the adjustment of your own personal freedom and time. That's kind of, for me, that was a big mindset shift that. You talked about it was easier to be patient before you had kids, and you had much more time with Katie then, and suddenly when Riley came along and two more, I imagine that kind of life has got very, very busy in terms of kind of the place your children take in your life. Have you managed to strike a sweet spot there around things for yourself in that, or have they been put aside here?
Well, one of the things I say it's very important, especially the guys inside my groups and stuff like that, is doing things for ourselves. Like I always talk about, put your own mask on first. It's important for us to look after ourselves before we try and look after our kids and our wives, because if we don't look after ourselves, you've probably heard this saying before, when the tide rises, all the boats rise. Be the tide, right? Put yourself first. Look at it. Now, a lot of people struggle with that because they think it's some kind of selfish thing. Oh, put yourself first. Now, again, it can be selfish. If I put myself first, like I did before, spending all my money on myself, if I'm going out drinking, taking drugs, leave my wife at home with the kids while I'm going out partying all the time, well, yeah, they're selfish. But when I'm taking care of my mental health and my physical health and I'm putting that first, that's my first priority in the morning. So I've created like a morning ritual where I get up early. I don't recommend that people do what I do. My alarm goes off at 3:45 in the morning. I get up, I go downstairs, I do my journal, and then I hit the gym, I get a workout in, then I come back and I do my meditation. And by that time, my kids are kind of waking up and I've already kind of built my foundations. I've planned my day out. I've got focused on what needs to get done, where I'm going, what I'm doing. I've got my workout in, I've got my sweat on. And now I've kind of had my visualization time, just, some meditation, just visualizing, and then by that time the kids are waking up. If not, then I'll just spend some time doing some stretching until they wake up and come downstairs. Now, a lot of people say to me, oh man, like I'd love to do that, but I can't do that. And I'm like, I'm not telling you to do that. What you just need to do is you just need to create some space and have something for yourself in the morning to get your mind right, get you focused on the day and get you moving forward in the right way. Like, so you're kind of coming from a place of creating the day instead of thinking like a lot of guys do is life's happening to them, right? You know, not got a clue what like I say, the wandering man. They don't really know what they want to achieve in a day. They ain't really got any plans, and they just kind of wander around, and life just bumps them from here to there. It's like me putting you in the ocean, Matt, in a boat with no engine, no oar, just put you in the ocean and just pushing you out and go, right, see you later on. You'll go, well, I want to go to South America. And I'll go, well, okay, there you go. You know, and you just end up somewhere completely different, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere completely different. So for me, I have created a morning routine that's challenging. It is challenging. I like that though. I like the challenge. I kind of thrive in challenge. It's something that I've learned about myself. But yeah, carving time out for myself is important. You know, walks, runs and stuff like that, man.
Brilliant. Love what you had to share there about that. You know, it doesn't have to be your flavour of it. It's just about dads really creating that sense of intentionality about the day.
Yeah, man.
I've got to ask you though, are you somebody who survives on very little sleep, or do you get to bed very early?
I get to bed about 9:30 at night. So I get to bed about 9:30, and I get up at quarter to 4, and I operate. I'm fine with that. I operate okay with that, man. You know, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of trial and error. I did try the 3 o'clock. I was getting up at 3 o'clock at one time, but that kind of zonked me out a little bit, and I was like, right, okay. So it just seems that sweet spot. I wake up without my alarm at 3:45. I'm up and I'm ready to go. And I'll get to the gym for about 4, get my workout in, get my stuff done, you know, and I feel good from that. If there's ever a time that I don't, then I listen to my body and I have a little adjust and a little play, you know. But I think it's really important, Matt, to have a set routine and have that time, like that space for me, especially like let's just say for now, like guys like going into lockdown. You know, I know plenty of guys that are going to go into lockdown. They're not working. They get up at random times. They stay in their pajamas all day. They've got nothing to focus on. Like last lockdown, me and the guys in the group, I jumped on the call with them and I was like, look, okay, this is happening, right? Now we're going to get the opportunity to really sharpen our skills and our tools as fathers, as husbands, right? On our physical health. We can work on our mental health. Okay, our businesses might drop down a bit or finances might drop down a bit, but we can still really double down and focus on these other areas. And, you know, for me, if I didn't have this and wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I probably would have gone fucking stir crazy, man. I would have gone nuts, you know? So.
Yeah, no, nice one, Michael. So we're nearly at the end, and I was going to ask you, what is, I don't know if this question is answerable or too big, but what is it you hope for your kids in the future?
What I hope for my kids. So, my kind of vision for my kids, and I say this to my wife a lot, one of my jobs as a father is to make my kids as least dependable on me as possible. That's one of my jobs as a father, I see, is make them least dependable on me as possible. You know, teaching and showing my kids, you know, how to build a business, how to make money, how to do it the right way, how to be good husbands, good mothers. That's more kind of my wife's side for my daughter because I'm not a female. But that's kind of the vision I see for my kids. He's taking responsibility and ownership for themselves. And so I'm always saying to my oldest boy, you know, because he's at that stage where something can happen and he'll point to the younger one. And I always say to him, I said, Riley, this is about responsibility and ownership. If you're honest with me, there may be a consequence, but you won't be in like trouble. But if you lie to me and blame someone else and they get in trouble when it's you, then I'll be cross with you because that's not right. So it's responsibility and ownership. Did you do it? And you go, yeah, okay, cool. There may be a consequence to that now, but I appreciate you being honest with me. So, you know, as you could probably tell, a lot for me is about ownership and responsibility. You know, taking ownership of your life, take responsibility of your life, you know, your actions. That's what I want for my kids. That's what I want to install in my kids.
Beautifully said. It's been so good having you on the show, Michael. Really enjoyed every minute of our conversation. Ton of value for me and everybody who's listening, I'm sure. Where can we find out more about you if people want to follow up?
People to follow up. I'm on Instagram. I don't even know my Instagram handle actually. I think it's Micheal Hilton 99. I think on Instagram. Or I am Micheal Hilton on my Facebook page. That's probably the best place. That's where I'm most active, on my Facebook page. My website www.michealhilton.com. You can get in contact me there. Just remember, my name is spelled different. It's spelled Micheal.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Very cool. It's been so good having you on the show. Thanks again for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, man.
Take care. Thanks so much for listening to the Heart of Dad podcast. My mission is to get this podcast out to as many dads as possible, to help them be in the conversation, which is a different one about being a dad. And you can help that. If you found this podcast valuable, could you do me a really big favour? And that's just to think of one other dad who you could share this with. And to do so, send him a link to the podcast. Get him involved in the conversation. Thank you so much.